This comes as the Ukrainian president, Zelensky, has continued to urge top U.S. business leaders and mayors to cease operations with Russia. Just yesterday, Zelensky pleaded for more weaponry, saying Ukraine's fight to defend the Donbas against Russia will go down in military history as one of the most brutal battles in Europe and for Europe.
But as Western military leaders are prepared to meet in Brussels today and tomorrow, officials are hesitant. The New York Times reports that American officials are doing a delicate dance of trying to push Ukraine to settle negotiations while being careful to not overstep.
Well, which is the right approach. We don't want to dictate to them what they should do, but we should be like, hey, what you should do is come to some kind of peace agreement, and this has to end because it's impoverishing, it's causing people to starve. We didn't sign up for this. We don't want the American people do not want this. They do not want a perpetual proxy war with Russia.
We, being Joe Biden, very much did sign up for this. Part of the whole first month of this conflict was getting people to recognize, the Western roots of some of this back in 2014. But now that we're here, look, the problem here is that this was all deeply predictable. We're talking about America sending weapons to basically extend a conflict with a nuclear power. The nuclear power part of it was always the end game. What are you going to do to actually empower Ukraine to win this war? Nothing. It's impossible. So it became a proxy war between two nuclear powers, and we all know how that kind of thing ends. There's been 50 years of movies about this kind of a thing. And so we were always going to end up here. We were always going to end up in a place where it was about negotiations and compromise. And the question was, how many people were going to die? How many weapons were going to be sent to this part of the world? How much money was going to be spent? How much were Americans going to have to pay the price at the pump before that happened? Joe Biden knew that. And when he announced in his speech that we were going to sanction Russia and that we were going to give military aid, he said explicitly, the American people have signed up for this, that Democrats and Republicans alike believe that this is a righteous cause. Well,
that's not right. But that's not true. They're saying that on behalf of the people. The people never said that. Obviously, Russia is the bad guy. The Putin regime is evil. If it collapsed, fine. But we can't. That can't be the aim of the conflict, because then the conflict will go on forever. And then, also what happens if the regime does collapse, right? How many times has it collapsed and been replaced by something better? Right.
It's not our job to do regime change.
No. How many times do you have to learn that?
With nuclear powers or anyone, frankly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But they caused this. They started it. They should not have done that, and we had to respond in some way. But there has to be some consent. If there was vast, what I'm saying is, if there was vast consent and agreement among the American people that we want some kind of protracted struggle on behalf of Ukraine, I would probably disagree with that, but I would say, okay. But that's clearly not what the people want. The people are clearly sending a message that they do not want this conflict to go on. It's too ruinous and destructive domestically. We can't afford it. We don't want to pay it. We're not prepared for it. We wanted to get out of this kind of thing, and yet here we are again.
Yeah, we used to have to go to Congress to go to war.
Right.
And now you just do a proxy battle and it's all good.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's no consent to do it.
Yeah.
There's no, technically there is, because Congress said, sure.
Yeah.
But that's not what the people want. And Republicans are actually realizing that, now not across the party, not the majority of the party, but the sliver of opposition in government to doing this is all coming from Republicans, which is fascinating.
I think that's right. I interviewed a couple of the most left people in Congress on my show in the course of this. I spoke to Bernie Sanders' foreign policy person, Matt Duss, and he was more hawkish, perhaps isn't the right word, but more hawkish than I think most of the left expected. I spoke to Ro Khanna back about a month or 6 weeks ago, and again more recently, and those positions still haven't changed. And that's kind of what the best and the brightest the left has to offer in Congress right now. And so I have to concede that point. There isn't a lot of anti-war sentiment coming from the left. Yeah. It's a weird place to be in.
I thought they'd be able to see through it, honestly. It's the sort of DC, the blob, we call it, right? The military-industrial complex in the government, the defense contracting, all of that seems to, even though we all know this doesn't, we have so many examples of this kind of thing not working, that sort of, the blob assimilates, the Congress into voting for more war, voting for more weapons, that kind of thing. It takes a real clear-eyed philosophical opposition to see through that. And I know many on the hard left, despite my numerous disagreements with them on lots of policies, on foreign policy, are often able to see through it. So it's interesting that it's not quite so this time.
Yeah.